If the 1950s were rewritten by the future. Chapter Sissy 1. The discovery that changed my understanding of history forever. Under the dim amber light of the university archives on that rainy October evening, while the sound of droplets against the tall windows created a rhythmic backdrop to my research, I stumbled upon a photograph that would shatter everything I thought I knew about the past and lead me to the most extraordinary love story I could never have imagined. My name is Dr. James Mitchell, and I'm a historian specializing in post-war America, particularly the social and technological developments of the 1950s. For the past 5 years, I've been working on what I believed would be a definitive book about how the decade shaped modern society. But that night, while examining a recently donated collection of personal papers from a deceased government official, I found something that didn't belong. A photograph, dated 1953, showing a crowd gathered around what appeared to be a television broadcast, except the television was displaying technology that wouldn't be invented for another 30 years. The image was crystal clear, professionally developed, and bore all the hallmarks of authentic 1950s photography. But the screen showed what looked unmistakably like a modern computer interface, complete with icons and graphics that wouldn't exist until the 1980s. I stared at the photograph for nearly an hour, my mind racing through possible explanations. A hoax, a mislabeled modern recreation. But the more I examined it, the more convinced I became that it was genuine and impossible. If you think you know where this story is heading, I assure you that the truth I was about to uncover would challenge not only my understanding of history, but my beliefs about time, destiny, and the power of love to transcend the impossible. Chapter 2. The evidence that defied explanation. Over the following weeks, I became obsessed with that photograph. I subjected it to every test I could think of: carbon dating of the paper, chemical analysis of the developing agents, even consultation with forensic photography experts. Every test confirmed what my eyes were telling me. This was an authentic photograph from 1953, but that was just the beginning. As I dug deeper into the donated collection, I found more anomalies. A diary entry from 1954, describing a miraculous new medicine that perfectly matched the description of antibiotics that wouldn't be widely available until the 1960s. A letter from 1955 mentioning a colored television demonstration that preceded the actual invention of color TV by several years. Most intriguing of all was a series of newspaper clippings from various small-town papers across America, all from the 1950s, describing minor events that seemed insignificant at the time but had prevented larger tragedies. A factory worker who inexplicably decided to check a gas line that was about to explode. A train conductor who made an unscheduled stop that avoided a collision. A scientist who abandoned a dangerous experiment after a sudden intuition about its risks. Each incident was small, seemingly random, but when I mapped them chronologically, a pattern emerged. Someone or something had been subtly intervening in events throughout the 1950s, making tiny adjustments that prevented disasters and guided technological development in specific directions. "This is fascinating work, Dr. Mitchell," said a voice behind me one evening as I worked late in the archives. I turned to see a woman I'd never met before, probably in her early 30s, with striking green eyes and an old-fashioned elegance that seemed to belong to another era. She was examining my research materials with obvious interest. "I'm sorry, but the archives are closed to visitors after hours," I said, though something about her presence felt oddly comforting rather than intrusive. "My name is Eleanor," she said with a smile that seemed to hold secrets. "I'm the new archival consultant. I specialize in temporal documentation." Temporal documentation? That was a term I'd never heard before. Chapter 3. The consultant who knew too much Eleanor began appearing regularly in the archives, always seeming to arrive just when I was making a significant discovery. Her knowledge of 1950s history was extraordinary, not just the major events that any historian would know, but intimate details about daily life, cultural nuances, and technological developments that would require years of specialized research to uncover. "You're investigating the interventions," she said one evening, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "The what?" I asked, though I had begun using that exact term in my private notes. "The small changes that were made to prevent larger catastrophes," Eleanor explained, settling into the chair across from my research table. "You've identified 17 separate incidents so far. There were actually 43. My heart began racing. "How could you possibly know that?" Eleanor smiled mysteriously. "Because I helped document them." She pulled out a leather portfolio that looked authentically vintage but contained documents I had never seen before. Detailed reports of each intervention, complete with before and after analyses of their historical impact. "This factory explosion that was prevented in Detroit," she said, pointing to one of my research files, "would have killed 200 workers and set back automotive safety research by a decade. This train collision that was avoided in Pennsylvania would have led to transportation regulations that would have stifled innovation for years." "But how do you know all this?" I pressed. "Because I was there," Eleanor said simply. "Not physically present, but observing, recording, ensuring that the changes were properly documented for future reference." The way she spoke about the 1950s wasn't like a historian discussing the past. It was like someone recounting personal memories, but that was impossible. Eleanor appeared to be in her 30s, which would make her birth year around 1990. "Eleanor," I said carefully, "when exactly were you born?" She looked at me with those enigmatic green eyes, and for a moment I saw something that looked like sadness. "That's a more complicated question than you might think, James." Chapter 4. The Revelation That Changed Everything. Over the next month, Eleanor and I worked together almost every evening. Her insights into my research were invaluable, but more than that, I found myself looking forward to our conversations with an anticipation that had nothing to do with academic curiosity. There was something about Eleanor that felt timeless. The way she moved with unconscious grace, the way she spoke with careful precision, the way she seemed to understand historical contexts with an intimacy that went beyond scholarly knowledge. "You're falling in love with her," my colleague Dr. Sarah Williams observed during lunch one day. "It's written all over your face." She was right, though I hadn't admitted it to myself. But there was something about Eleanor that felt both familiar and mysterious, as if I had been waiting my entire life to meet her without knowing it. One evening, as we worked late examining a particularly puzzling document, a 1956 scientific paper that described theoretical concepts that wouldn't be formulated until the 1970s, Eleanor suddenly looked up at me with an expression of profound sadness. "James," she said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you, something about who I really am." "I'm listening," I said, though part of me was afraid of what she might reveal. Eleanor took a deep breath. "I wasn't born in this time period. I'm from the year 2089. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline or the explanation that would make sense of what she had just said. When neither came, I felt the world shift beneath me. "That's impossible," I said automatically. "The interventions you've been researching," Eleanor continued, "they weren't random acts of intuition or luck. They were carefully planned modifications to the timeline, executed by temporal agents from my era to prevent a catastrophic war that would have destroyed civilization in 1962. "Time travel," I said slowly. "You're telling me that time travel exists?" "In my time, yes. And the 1950s were identified as a crucial intervention point. Small changes made during that decade could prevent the nuclear exchange that would have ended human civilization." Chapter 5. the mission that brought her to me. Eleanor spent the next hour explaining the impossible. In her timeline, the original 1950s had led to a nuclear war in 1962 that devastated the planet. Survivors in the far future had developed time travel technology specifically to prevent that catastrophe. The interventions had to be subtle, she explained. Major changes to the timeline could have unpredictable consequences. So we made tiny adjustments, preventing specific accidents, inspiring certain innovations, guiding key individuals toward different decisions. And your role in all this? I'm a temporal archivist, Eleanor said. My job is to document the changes and ensure they're preserved in the historical record. I've been living in this time period for 3 years, establishing my cover identity and monitoring the intervention sites. 3 years, I asked, but you look. Time travel technology includes biological stabilization, Eleanor explained. I age much more slowly while I'm displaced from my native timeline. The scientific impossibility of what she was describing warred with the growing certainty in my heart that she was telling the truth. Everything about Eleanor, her knowledge, her mannerisms, her otherworldly quality, suddenly made sense. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Eleanor's expression became even more pained. Because my mission is almost complete. The interventions have been successful, the timeline has been stabilized, and I'm scheduled to return to my own time in 2 weeks. Return? The word hit me like a physical blow. I never intended for this to happen, Eleanor said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. I never intended to fall in love. The admission hung in the air between us, transforming everything. She loved me, and I loved her, but she was from a future I would never see, and she was about to leave forever. Chapter 6. The Choice That Defied Time Itself. The next 2 weeks were the most intense and heartbreaking of my life. Eleanor and I spent every possible moment together, knowing that our time was limited in the most literal sense possible. She showed me wonders I could never have imagined. Photographs from her time, descriptions of the world that would exist after the timeline was corrected, stories of the civilization that would flourish because of the interventions she had helped coordinate. In my original timeline, she told me one evening, as we walked through the university campus, this entire area was a wasteland. The war destroyed everything. But now, because of the changes we made, it will become a center of learning and innovation that lasts for centuries. And you'll be there to see it, I said, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. I'll be there, Eleanor confirmed, but I'll remember this time. I'll remember you. That's not enough, I said, stopping in the middle of the path. Eleanor, there has to be another way. Can't you stay? Can't I come with you? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. The temporal displacement technology only works for trained agents with specific biological modifications. And if I stay, I'll eventually age and die while you're still. Young because my biological stabilization will fail outside my native timeline. I don't care, I said desperately. Whatever time we have, it's worth it. James, Eleanor said, taking my hands in hers, there's something else, something I haven't told you. Chapter 7. The Secret That Changed Everything. In my research of this time period, Eleanor continued, I discovered something that wasn't in any of our historical records. I discovered you. What do you mean? Your work, your research into the interventions, it wasn't supposed to happen. In the original timeline, these documents were never donated to the university. You never found the photograph. You never started investigating. I felt a chill run down my spine. Then why did it happen? Because I made it happen, Eleanor admitted. I arranged for the documents to be donated. I made sure you would find the photograph. I guided your research because I wanted to meet you. But why? Eleanor's voice became barely a whisper. Because in my time, in the historical records of this era, There are stories about a mysterious woman who appeared in the 1950s and helped prevent a great catastrophe. The stories say she fell in love with a historian from the past and found a way to stay with him. My mind reeled. You're saying that the historical records from your time include our story? I'm saying that somehow, in some version of events, we find a way to be together. And that gives me hope that there's a solution we haven't thought of yet. What kind of solution? Eleanor pulled out a device I had never seen before, a small crystalline object that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. This is a temporal anchor, she explained. It's experimental technology that can create a stable time loop, allowing someone from the future to exist permanently in the past without aging or biological degradation. And you have one. I stole it, Eleanor admitted. It was meant for emergency use only, but I couldn't bear the thought of leaving you forever. Chapter 8. The decision that would change both our lives. Using the temporal anchor means I can never return to my own time, Eleanor explained. It's a one-way decision. I would be permanently displaced, cut off from everything and everyone I've ever known, but you'd be here. With me? Yes, Eleanor said. But James, you need to understand what you'd be giving up too. If I stay, if I use the anchor, it will create temporal ripples. Your life will be different. Your career, your research, your future, everything will change in ways we can't predict. I don't care, I said immediately. Eleanor, I love you. I don't care what changes, and I love you, she replied. But this decision affects more than just us. The timeline we've worked so hard to preserve could be altered in unexpected ways. We spent the next 3 days agonizing over the decision. Eleanor showed me projections of what might happen if she used the temporal anchor, possible futures where our love story created ripples that changed history in both positive and negative ways. In some projections, she explained, our relationship inspires scientific breakthroughs that accelerate human development. In others, the temporal disturbance we create leads to new problems that require additional interventions. But in all of them, we're together. In all of them, we're together, Eleanor confirmed. On the final night before her scheduled departure, as we sat in the archives, surrounded by the documents that had brought us together, Eleanor made her decision. I'm staying, she said, holding up the temporal anchor. Whatever the consequences, whatever changes we create, I'm staying. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Eleanor replied. I was sent here to preserve the future, but you are my future. Chapter 9. The transformation that defied all expectations. Eleanor activated the temporal anchor at exactly midnight, and the effect was unlike anything I could have imagined. The crystalline device dissolved into particles of light that seemed to merge with Eleanor herself, and for a moment she appeared to glow with the same inner radiance. It's done, she said, and I could hear the finality in her voice. I'm permanently anchored to this timeline now. There's no going back, but the changes began immediately. Over the following days, I noticed subtle differences in the world around us. The university archives suddenly contained documents that hadn't been there before, records of Eleanor's work as a temporal consultant that somehow now had a complete paper trail. Dating back months, my own research took on new dimensions as Eleanor's knowledge, no longer constrained by the need to maintain her cover, opened up entirely new avenues of historical investigation. Together, we began documenting not just the interventions that had already occurred, but developing frameworks for understanding how small changes in the past could create positive outcomes in the future. We're creating a new field of study, Eleanor observed one morning as we reviewed our latest findings. Temporal history, the science of understanding how past, present, and future interact. And we're doing it together, I said, still marveling at the reality of our situation. But the most remarkable change was in Eleanor herself. The sadness that had always lingered in her eyes was gone, replaced by a joy and contentment that seemed to radiate from her very being. I thought I would miss my own time, she told me one evening. But this feels like where I was always meant to be. Chapter 10. The Love That Rewrote History Itself. Today, 5 years after Eleanor made the decision to stay, our life together has exceeded every dream I could have imagined. We married in a small ceremony, attended by colleagues who know Eleanor as a brilliant historian, with an uncanny intuition for understanding the past. Our work has revolutionized the field of historical research. The temporal history methodology we developed has been adopted by universities around the world, leading to new insights into how historical events interconnect across time periods. But more than our professional success, it's the depth of our personal connection that continues to amaze me. Eleanor and I don't just share a love, we share a mission. Every day, we work together to understand how the past shapes the future and how individual choices can create ripples that extend across generations. Do you ever regret it? I asked Eleanor recently as we walked through the same campus where she first revealed her true identity. Giving up your own time to stay here. Eleanor stopped and turned to me with that radiant smile that still takes my breath away. James, don't you understand? I didn't give up my time. I found it. What do you mean? In my original timeline, I was just documenting history. But here with you, we're creating it. Every day we spend together, every discovery we make, every life we touch through our work, we're writing the future. She was right. Our love story had become more than just a romance. It had become a force for positive change that rippled through time itself. Besides, Eleanor added with a mischievous grin, I have it on good authority that our story has a very happy ending. How could you possibly know that? Because, she said, pulling out a photograph I had never seen before, this was in the historical archives of my time. The photograph showed an elderly couple standing together in front of a university building, surrounded by students and colleagues. The man was clearly an older version of myself, and the woman was unmistakably Eleanor, aged but still radiant. We have a long and wonderful life ahead of us, Eleanor said. And the best part is, we get to live it together, one day at a time. As I looked at that photograph, evidence of our future happiness preserved in the past, I realized that Eleanor had given me the greatest gift imaginable, not just her love, but the certainty that our love would endure across all the years to come. The 1950s had indeed been rewritten by the future. But more than that, the future had been rewritten by love. A love strong enough to transcend time itself and create new possibilities that neither past nor future could have imagined alone. Did you enjoy this fascinating story? Then don't forget to follow for the next ones. By the way, an even better story is appearing on your screen right now. Click on it and I'll meet you there.